Hi, this is Dr. Gregory Sadler. I'm a professor of philosophy and the president and founder of an educational consulting company called Reason.io, where we put philosophy into practice. I've studied and taught philosophy for over 20 years, and I find that many people run into difficulties reading classic philosophical texts. Sometimes it's the way things are said or how the text is structured. But the concepts themselves are not always that complicated, and that's where I come in. To help students and lifelong learners, I've been producing longer lecture videos and posting them to YouTube. Many viewers say they find them useful. What you're currently watching is part of a new series of shorter videos, each of them focused on one core concept from an important philosophical text. I hope you find it useful as well. In Article 4 of question 28 of the first part of the second part of his Summa Theologiae, Thomas Aquinas is going to consider a very interesting question, one which turns on a certain kind of ambiguity that shows up in Latin and also in our English terminology, although we don't use the word zeal quite so often or zealous. It still contains the same, we could say, range of possible meanings, and it's going to come up in the context not just of philosophy or literature, but specifically Scripture as a term that gets used in multiple ways. So there's a bit of confusion, and it ties into wider issues having to do with the nature of love, particularly between people. So the term is zeal, right? And in Latin, it's zelus. We get the word zeal from that. And interestingly, the Latin term is reflective of two different Greek terms that can both be translated as zeal, but also in other ways. So there's zēlos and zēlotupia. We typically, when we're translating ancient Greek philosophy that discusses this, we generally translate zēlotupia as jealousy, understood in the modern sense of being jealous of something that you don't want to share with somebody else. So being a jealous spouse, right? You're overzealous in making sure your spouse is not cheating on you or being seduced or even being flirted with by somebody else or opportunities for that. Zēlos is a different term that has a more positive connotation. For example, Aristotle actually talks about it as a good state of character. We translate it in the passages where he does that not as zeal, but as emulation. When you see that somebody is doing something better than you and you're like, oh man, I wish I could be like that. I wish I could be that good. You feel emulation towards that person rather than envy. And envy and jealousy, we distinguish between them in English. Envy is wanting what somebody else has. Jealousy is when you want to keep somebody else from having what you have or think you have, right? So there's already a lot of ambiguity involved in this, and that's part of why he can ask the question whether zeal is an effect of love. Does love produce zeal? And the answer is, well, yes, but there's different kinds of zeal. So we begin by looking at the objections, as we usually do. There's a scriptural passage, whereas there is among you zeal, which is sometimes translated as envying, and contention. So we don't want that, right? This is Paul saying to the Corinthians, you guys are screwing up in this way. So zeal is a beginning, a principium of contention with other people. Love is not going to produce that, right? So contention is actually incompatible with love. Zeal is not an effect of love. The second one is going to be using a term in a way that's a little bit complex and requires some explanation. So zeal is going to be opposed to communication, which is going to be problematic. The object of love is the good. The good communicates itself to others, as Thomas says. Now, communicate here, don't think in terms of like verbal communication or written communication. Think in terms of sharing. It comes from the word commune, which means common or shared in. The good, if it's genuinely good, doesn't withhold itself. It actually shares itself with others. Zeal seems to want to be more selfish or reserved. It wants to hold something back. So he says, a person refuses to share the object of love with another. Great example of this. Husbands are said to be jealous of, and he uses the word zēlere there, to be zealous for their wives because they won't share them with others, as Thomas thinks they shouldn't, right? So zeal is actually not an effect of love because it holds back the communication that should be happening, or the sharing. Third, there's no zeal without hatred, and neither is there without love. And we read in the Psalms, I had a zeal on occasion of the wicked. You don't love the wicked, you hate the wicked because they're bad, right? So it shouldn't be set down as an effect of love any more than it is of hatred. It seems to be, if we're going to say it's an effect of both of them or neither of them, it involves hatred just as much as love, so it's not something distinctive to love. So Thomas is going to tell us a couple things here to clarify it. He says, zeal, whatever way we take it. Now, whatever way we take it, that's a pretty important little phrase there. It means there is multiple ways for us to take this term zeal. What causes zeal? It arises from the intensity, the intensio of love itself, and it arises because it withstands opposition or resistance. Contrarium, something that is opposed, that is contrary to. Well, repugnans, pushing back, right? So resistance is a good translation for that. Zeal arises when we're in situations where we're encountering some opposition or resistance, and it seeks to remove what opposes it. And, as a side note, this means that we could look at zeal as actually being something that clearly belongs to the irascible appetite, which has to do with, as Thomas says, the difficult good, which requires some sort of facing resistance or danger or difficulty, right? Now, that means that zeal arises when it's needed, or seems to be needed, we should say, because people do get zealous about things that they don't need to. So it can happen in two different ways, depending on what kind of love we're talking about. Thomas distinguishes between love of concupiscence. You want something that you don't have, or you want to keep having the thing that you want. And then love of friendship. You want the good for the other. So he says that in the case of love of concupiscence, somebody who desires something intensely is moved against whatever hinders either getting or gaining that thing, or enjoying the object of love, as he's going to say, quietly. That is, without other people bothering you. So we've got three examples of this. The jealousy that spouses feel. You want to enjoy your conjugal rights with them, and everybody should keep their hands off and stay away, right? That's being jealous in that sense. That's concupiscence. He also talks about those who seek to excel being moved against those who seem to excel, as though these were a hindrance to their excelling. Now, that's interesting, isn't it? Because, if you want to excel maybe because you're not already, and it's against those who don't necessarily excel, but seem to excel. and you're assuming that them doing well, them excelling, being, superior to other people makes them superior to you, and it gets in the way of you excelling. So, for example, if you're into playing guitar and you want to be really, really good, and you see somebody else who seems to be doing better than you. They've put in 5 more years. They, are a lot better at all the different things that we think about make a good guitarist. You don't like that because they're in some way standing in your way. And they're not actually standing in your way because you can practice all you want as well. So he says that, this is kind of a funny one. And he says, this is the zeal of envy, of which is written, be not emulous of evildoers, nor envy them that work iniquity. And we could do this in just about anything. If we're envious of other people, we see them as somehow in the way for us. So that's love of concupiscence. That's the zeal that arises out of that. What about love of friendship? That's very different. He says, love of friendship, it seeks the friend's good. So when it is intense, it causes a person to be moved against everything that opposes the friend's good, right? So this can be with being zealous on the behalf of a friend. You want your friend to be healthy. You don't like, it could be even, you don't like the fact that they're not living a healthy lifestyle. And so you're like, I don't want to go drinking with you. Instead, why don't we go hit the gym? Or have a good meal together, not fast food crap, but let's cook a nice meal at home where we know what all the ingredients are. There could be all sorts of things like this. You could be like, hey, I don't think we should be spending so much time gaming. We should be improving our minds to some degree. And learning the lore of the game is not actually improving your mind the way that you think it is if you're playing Civilization or something else, right? Because the designers usually don't know that much about the lore that they're talking about if it's a historical game. So you can be zealous on behalf of a friend. You could also be standing up for them as an advocate. They're in the hospital. You want them to be well taken care of. The hospital people are interested mainly in cutting costs and getting people out of the beds and shuffling them off. And you're like, no. We need to take care of this person here who you have a duty to care for, right? That's being jealous on the behalf of a friend. Could be in terms of the spouse. Their family are being mean to them. You stick up for them. And you're like, you don't talk to my wife or husband that way. What's wrong with you, right? What about being zealous on God's behalf? He says, a person is said to be zealous on God's behalf when they endeavor to the best of their means to repel whatever is contrary to the honor or the will of God. So, you're looking out for God in a way. You want people to follow the will of God. Now, it's quite possible that a lot of people who might claim to be zealous for God with love of friendship are actually, motivated by love of concupiscence if they have a mistaken conception of God. Thomas doesn't talk about that here, but I think that's worth pointing out. How does this help us with these arguments that were made in the objections? Well, the first one, he says, listen, Paul is just talking about the zeal of envy, and that is indeed the cause of contention, not against the object of love, but for it and against what is opposed to it. We understand how this works. That's love of concupiscence, and it is caused by love, so it's an effect of love, but we don't really want that. Same thing, the zeal of envy comes up with argument 2, with the sharing or communication. He says, the zeal of envy is going to arise in terms of certain goods that really can't be shared, right? He says, whatever hinders the perfection of this communication becomes hateful. Zeal arises from love of good. Certain small goods cannot be possessed by many at the same time. So, for example, money, right? Money is a good, but it is not the good. And if I have some money, you can't have that same money. If I want to give it to you, now I don't have it. We could say the same with other things as well. But there are some goods that can be shared, where we can have this communication. He gives the example, no one envies another the knowledge of truth which can be known by many. If I know what the truth is, I'm not taking anything away from you, unless, like he points out, maybe one may envy another his superiority in the knowledge of it. That's where we get to this excels thing, right? So you could be envious of me for knowing more about Thomas Aquinas. I could be envious of Thomas Aquinas for knowing more about the things that he's talking about. It's kind of a stupid way to look at things, because Thomas isn't taking anything away from me by being smarter than me, right? Or understanding things better. Finally, the last one, he says, the very fact that a man hates whatever is opposed to the object of his love is an effect of love. Love has a priority over hatred. You hate what gets in your way, right? So hatred and love are not on exactly the same level here. And zeal is indeed, even though it involves hatred in some respect, at least certainly the love of concupiscence, perhaps even the love of friendship. You hate what's going to harm your friend or get in the way of your friend attaining what's good for them. The hatred arises from love. So that answers these objections. And I think this is a very useful set of clarifications that Thomas is providing us when it comes to this rather ambiguous term, zeal, and thinking about whether it is or isn't an effect of love.